Now, here's the thing before we start. What is the protocol of, because if we were having a meeting, or if we were like meeting face to face and say it was 7:30, you wouldn't burst through the door at 7:30 and go, right, I'm here, let's get started, would you? You'd be 5 minutes early.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah. You'd kind of, but you always, whenever, if I've just turned up right on time, you've always have a go. Start having a go. He's having a go at me now.
Is that true? No, I'd say the emphasis is usually in the other direction. I'm usually late, to be fair, but then it seems to be very important to you. I think you take it personally if I'm late, whereas you should just think, he's just a bit disorganised, bless him.
No, but I don't see. I don't mind if you're late. It's just that if I turn up on time, and you go, oh, look at you, right on time. Then all I'm saying is, what's the protocol? Because if you're having a Skype meeting, are you supposed to turn up on time? That's what I want to know.
I think one should try to turn up on time, but not obsess about it.
Oh, okay. It's always back to me, and it doesn't matter which way we go. Hello and welcome to the Comedy Slab podcast. I'm Shane O'Connor. He's Adrian Lacey. And if you can hear anything in the background, I know you certainly can at this end. Well, I can hear it because I'm wearing headphones. But there's a hell of a storm brewing, isn't there? There's a
dark
real
and stormy night.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm sort of doing it at the far end of a wind tunnel at the moment from where I am. But so hopefully it won't interfere with your listening pleasure too much. This is a podcast about comedy, as you'd have probably gathered by looking at the title of the podcast, the Comedy Slab podcast. We get together every week, Adrian and I. We choose a comedy. Alternately, he chooses one week, and sorry, someone just dropped off there. I'll glue that back on afterwards.
Was that your false leg?
It's yes. Anyway, sorry, where was I? Oh yes, we choose a comedy show to listen to or to watch, depending on what medium it is. And we'll play you a couple of clips through the podcast, of course, to give you a flavour of what we've been watching or listening to. And at the end of the podcast, if everything works out as it should and we haven't throttled each other, which is quite a neat trick, 130 miles apart, we'll each give it a mark out of 5, giving it a grand total out of 10. We also do a bit of comedy news as well, and I spotted something. And do you know, I thought of you when I spotted it, because I remember you talking about a guy that I'd not really heard of. I think we were talking about Spitting Image, were we, when we were talking about Enrightel?
Yes, but I wonder if, I got this horrible feeling I was confusing him with Steve Nallen. Now, Steve Nallen was famous for doing the voice of Margaret Thatcher.
I interviewed Steve, yeah. Brummie.
Did Steve Nallen do a good impersonation of a Brummie? Better than me, I'm sure.
No, funnily enough, he didn't do much of a Brummie. But then, well, I suppose if you're a vocal whiz, then you would. I mean, his Thatcher was brilliant, wasn't it? He got all the nuances of that, and but. So you think what Enrightel was, because he did voices as well? I'm not really quite sure. I looked at his face in the pictures that I saw on this news story, and I thought, do I know him or not? I couldn't make up my mind.
No, it's strange that the name is more familiar than the face. So I wondered whether that's because he was more a radio and audio man than a visual actor. Anyway, do tell the story, because I think it's an interesting one and it raises some interesting questions.
Well, it's basically it's this. In the very early days of Channel 4, a sitcom was commissioned. I think it had about £1 million budget. A sitcom was commissioned,
which is massive if you think this is nearly 40 years ago, and Channel 4.
Yeah, this is when Channel 4 first started, wasn't it? So they haven't. I presume they haven't got a lot of cash to splash about, or maybe they had. I don't know. But they made this. They commissioned and made this sitcom called The Optimist. And what was unusual about it was, and this is well before the days of Mr. Bean, for anybody who thinks, oh, well, that's already been done, was a totally silent sitcom or comedy, 13 episodes, and it aired between 83 and 85, and it's kind of gone off the radar. In fact, I think they lost the master tapes at one time. Enrightel was saying that they managed to track them down, and now they're asking for $6,500 to as a kind of GoFundMe sort of project to try and get this thing released onto DVD. And it just caught my attention because I just thought, on so many levels, what?
What was your first what? Was it what? 5 watts. He's not very bright.
My first watt, was it's very much in the, not so much Mr. Bean, but in the style of Jacques Tati, if you remember.
Ah, yes. Who could oublier Jacques Tati? My dad introduced me to Tati, so it was Daddy Tati to me.
Right. But don't you think when you look at it, it's kind of got that Mr. H is late kind of feel to it, you know what I mean? It's that sort of Mr. Hulot was his character, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. I've just seen the trailer for it, which is trying to sort of raise the cash. I mean, there are a number of questions. My first one would be: is DVD a bit too retro to be, commonly useful for people? Surely people are going to expect a download option or streaming option.
Well, how weird you should say that, because you're talking to a man who's just recently bought Colin Sandwich, Mel Smith, the Mel Smith sitcom, and the box set of Ronnie Corbett's Sorry on DVD.
Both of which shows I worked on.
I knew you'd worked on Sorry. I thought you'd worked on Sorry, but I didn't know you worked on Colin Sandwich as well.
Well, that needs a bit of explanation. I don't know if anyone remembers from the other week when I said I worked on an episode of Bread during a strike. Well, I didn't break the strike, but we couldn't do the show on the Sunday with the audience. So we picked up the recording when the strike was over. They were just 24-hour strikes. Way back when, and we recorded it without an audience on the Monday, and then they showed it to an audience and recorded their laughter within a week or two after that.
Right.
Well, I worked on 5 minutes of Colin Sandwich. It's very sad because it's the only time I worked with Mel Smith, who of course died young, and we literally the floor managers we'd rigged the show, which takes about an hour. So that would have been from the start time of 9:30 to 10:30 in the morning. There were 13-hour days in those days, sitcoms at BBC Television Centre. And then I remember virtually to the minute the floor manager said, right, okay, scene 1, shot 1, or whatever it was, or words to that effect. It was, there's a strike. And I remember Mel Smith's face, which, I mean, he did tend to looked like a bulldog chewing a wasp anyway, but you can imagine he was all geared up, ready to go. And then he would have known, because it was in the news and because, he was in the biz, if the plugs were pulled at 10:30 in the morning, you weren't going to make the show. That was it. So, and it's very sad, as I say, only time I worked with him, never worked on Colin Sandwich again, hence. And I think I was probably just scheduled for that one day, and the one day they pulled the plugs. Contrary to what people might believe, really the BBC employees, certainly at that time, weren't the militant people we might have been portrayed in the press. And we do actually like making shows. We don't go into work to not make a show.
No,
so it was sad all round.
The industry wasn't without its troubles, though, was it? I mean, if you watch in sequence, on the buses. At one stage, that reverts to black and white, and you think, well, hang on a second, they got colour cameras by this stage, and what it was it was all new technology, and the cameramen had gone on strike at ITV or I'm trying to think who it was.
Thames,
was it Thames or LWT?
LWT, yeah,
LWT possibly. They'd all gone on strike, and they said, right, we're not using the new technology. We're using black and white cameras. And they went, okay, we'll do it. We'll shoot it in. Well, it was live, wasn't it? Then it went out live.
Did it?
Yeah. So we'll do it in that, and we'll do it in black and white. So this. After doing a series in colour, they went back and did about 5 episodes in black and white. So there was a lot of it about, wasn't there? That kind of discontent amongst the TV world. It's interesting you say about the DVD thing on that side as well, but also, what do you think about getting? I mean, presumably, they're not going to get a free copy of the DVD. Getting punters to pay for them to have it. I mean, they're having it remastered and redigitized or something, which I don't know why that costs $6,500, but there you go.
Well, that to me seems the small figure. The big figure is what you've already alluded to, the £1 million to make it. It's just, are there enough people out there to dig into their pockets? He did promise, I think, a signed DVD, as in, you bring it along and I'll sign it.
Yeah.
But it's not quite clear where you bring it along to. Is he doing it at his home, or does he come round to you?
No, I just wonder whether that's, how successful you would be, given, as you say, that this is 40 years old, and people will go, well, I didn't see it the first time round, because I didn't see it the first time round. I don't know about you.
No.
And I've lived without it ever since. Do I really need to put minimum donation is £15? I think it's quite an interesting concept, though, and I do wonder whether, there are other things that I kind of think, I wish they'd release on. Why don't they release it on DVD? The one that springs to mind for me is there was also Channel 4, I think, Tommy Tiernan, where he worked in a video store. I think it was called Small Potatoes. I think Sanjeev Bhaskar was in it as well.
How far back does that go? Do you know?
Early 90s, late 80s, I'm guessing. But there's like one surviving little clip on YouTube. But you kind of think, well, that'd be a prime candidate. I wonder if people, there's enough Tommy Tiernan fans out there who might think, oh, I'd like to see that again. Is this the future of getting back the things that we want to see?
How much is stuff just going to be put on YouTube, or is already on YouTube? You see stuff with the telltale VT clock. That's a sign it's an inside job, as it were. It's come from at some level, come from a broadcast professional, or has got into the hands out of a broadcast professional into, I don't know, maybe slightly, shall we say, more soiled hands. But the point being that you're not looking at something that was recorded off the air. So I just wonder if the whole thing's going to be undercut. I wish them well with it, but it could be easily undercut, couldn't it? Someone saying, well, I don't want to dip it to my pocket. I'll just go into the loft where I have the master tapes or whatever. But hey, you said the master tapes were lost, and one can only assume, the term master tape implies it's the one and only, to coin a phrase. So I don't know, but £6,500 I don't think is much at all, but it's a catch-22 thing to me. You've already touched on the fact, and it's the same for me. I hadn't heard of it, and certainly hadn't seen it, therefore. If people haven't heard of it, are they affectionate? Can they possibly be affectionate enough for it to dip into their pockets for it?
Oh, well, remains to be seen anyway. If you want, if you Google it, or you can have a look on the comedy.co.uk website, and there's a link there to the Just Giving page. I think they've when I checked yesterday, I think it was about $3,000, I think $2,500, something like that. So anyway, onwards and upwards. My turn to choose last week, and I chose, I thought we'd gone Irish comedy. You'd championed Scottish comedy. And I thought, well, what about the poor old Welsh? They don't get much of a look in, but of course although we have done, didn't we do Gavin and Stacey, I think, didn't we? So
yes, and in terms of dramas, they get Casualty and Doctor Who just on the BBC alone, so they might find it slightly a pat on the head to say the poor old Welsh.
Yeah, although
just saying.
They probably would go, Doctor Who is not really outwardly visible as Welsh. Is he just, hello, I'm the Doctor, isn't it? Have you seen my TARDIS?
Well, he's a Time Lord,
Yes.
Where's that from? It's out of this world, quite literally.
Yeah. So I don't know, but anyway. So I thought, no, it wasn't my main reason. My main reason for choosing this was the creator and writer, or one of them anyway, a guy called Steve Spears, who every time I see him in something, I think he's just fabulous. In fact, I watched a clip of him on YouTube the other day. He's in Afterlife with Ricky Gervais, and Ricky Gervais works for a newspaper. He's a reporter for a newspaper, and him and Tony Ray, who's his photographer, go along and to see this guy who is Steve Spears, who's been inadvertently posting all his mail into a dog poo bin, and can't understand why he's not getting any letters back. And it's just one of the funniest scenes. And Steve Spears, I think, really makes it. He's a big guy. And he's just got a bit of presence. So I had high hopes for this. It's called The Tuckers, set in South Wales in the valleys, and it's about a family, the Tuckers. It's no more complex than that, is it? Really, I suppose. Had you come across this? Had you seen it? Did you know of it?
No. Contrary to what some people believe, I don't sell myself as a comedy expert. And no, I don't watch an awful lot of what we must now call linear TV. So I miss trailers. I know you can get trailers online and streaming and catch up and so on. But no, this one, for me at least, was under the Lacey radar. So I was happy to bring a completely clean slate to it. Although I did know Steve. It's pronounced Spears, not Spires, is it?
I think Spears, yeah.
Spears, right. Because there was a Bobby Spires who used to direct Absolutely Fabulous, and he was pronounced Spires, Spiers. So it's confusing. But no, I'm happy to give it a go. But I recognise him and like him in things I've seen him in. But be interesting to slab something that he's more, I think, driven would be fair to say, rather than just appearing in.
Because the passenger in. Can I just say that sounds like something that would be used to good effect in the War of the Sexes, the Lacey radar. Captain, bring out the Lacey radar.
I'm always appearing on gaydar. I send my polite excuses and leave, but what can you do, eh? I'm not exactly macho man, so yeah. Hey,
that's an interesting. Anyway,
just a side issue.
Well, yes.
But of course, there are macho gay people, as someone's about to telephone me to tell me.
Somebody switch off the Lacey radar, will you please? It's all gone sexy. Thank you. Thanks. So shall we have a clip and have
I think it's well timed for that.
And then we can get a headline and we can nail your rainbow colours to the mast. and get on with things. First clip I chose was we're kind of straight in and we're introduced to Glyn, who is the main character played by Steve Spears, Glyn Tucker, and he's new and very obviously new to him anyway. His new pride and joy. Which is, and I said he's a big fella. I'm not really quite sure whether he needs this or whether he doesn't fancy walking. But his new pride and joy is his new mobility scooter, complete with mirrors.
My new mirrors, how are they looking?
Like they belong on the side of a bus.
Yeah, these will make me stand out, these will.
Yeah, like a right dick.
Jealousy's a terrible thing, lads, you know. I can see it a mile off.
You can see a squirrel a mile off in those bastards. Send them back.
Ma'am? Ma'am, you all right?
What the hell are you doing here?
Charming.
Well, you're always up the bookies on a Saturday morning.
Is that the back door?
What?
Somebody just used the back door.
Wind, Glyn. How many times have I asked you to tighten those poxy hinges?
With these hands? Dr. Khaled says it's a miracle I can hold a knife and fork with my arthritis.
The only miracle in this house is how much food you can put away your fat get.
That's not fat. That's nerves, that is. That's nerves. Anyway, something big turned up this morning.
Don't worry about it.
Come on, I gotta show you, come on. Ta-da! My new mirror.
It raises interesting questions of mobility. And you've raised the issue of a headline, which we do each time, trying to sum up in a pithy phrase how we feel about a show. So are you ready for mine? I'm sorry to say it's not Tucker's luck. That's an ancient reference.
Yeah.
Google it.
All the Grange Hill fans there going, I know what it means. I know exactly what it means. So I'm not surprised. Let me say this. I'm not surprised at your headline. And I kind of fear the worst after watching it. And I'm intrigued to know why, though. Why? What did its legs for you?
Well, in a sense, there's nothing wrong with it. It ticks along quite nicely, and it's all competently shot, played, acted, written, but just doesn't set the world alight for me. It just feels very ordinary. And it's funny, it reminds me of nothing so much as Bread, in fact, from the 80s. Didn't that have Grandad out with an outside Kazi and was it Gene Boat who played whoever the central female character was, she was carrying on, wasn't she, with someone?
Yeah, well, her husband was carrying on with Lilo Lil. Yeah.
Oh, that was it. Yeah. Okay, genders swapped around. It was the 80s, but can you see? It just feels a little bit tired.
Well, if I read my notes directly, I've written Welsh bread for the 21st century.
Oh, I thought you meant it was bred in Wales.
No.
Well, there's a thing.
Exactly
See,
what you
we do agree on some things, don't we?
Yeah.
But that only came to me literally this evening. It was in a flash of inspiration, along with the flash floor cleaner. No, it's as I was staring out the window. I get my best ideas that way.
Yeah.
And suddenly I got it. I thought I was thinking of this outside Carsey, and sort of illicit love affair between senior people,
Yeah.
or at least one. Yeah, is that what? Are those the things that made you draw those parallels?
Yeah, I mean, and like the family dynamic, and the two brothers that get on, and the whole thing had that kind of fun. It's interesting. We were was it last time out we were talking about how many times the situation in sitcom has been repeated. If you imagine all the ones that were set in a store, for example, in the world of retail, or how many have been set in the world of the police, or and it's interesting that sometimes they will remind you of each other, and other times they're completely different and they don't. This one, for me, it's that whole family dynamic thing, and it's about a family life. It's nothing new, is it, in that sense?
No, and a working class family.
Yeah.
With, the central tension is built around. Ricky Gervais says all comedy in Britain is built around class, but it's about the middle class lover, sort of stepping a foot into a working class world, or at least that develops a bit later.
Like run-ins with the police, the wrong side of the law. Relationships breaking down and trying to get those back on track. You're right. I mean, this. To be honest with you, I was really disappointed because I thought it was going to be something much more in the vanguard than it was, and it like you say, there was nothing you couldn't say, oh, that was rubbish, or that they shouldn't have done this, we shouldn't have done that, whatever. But the sum of the parts didn't make it the Goliath that you wanted it to be, did it? It just didn't kind of get off the ground really for me.
No, it trundled along the runway, and there were one or two potholes, sadly, and otherwise, as I say, sort of, and you're saying, perfectly competent, but just unexciting, really, and unadventurous.
You look at the people who've been involved in it, though, behind the camera, people like the director Ian Fitzgibbon, who has worked on Caitlin Moran's Raised by Wolves, which I think was quite critically well received. The Paul Whitehead. Have you seen the Paul Whitehead thing, Nurse? Ian Fitzgibbon was involved in that, and he was actually an actor in Father Ted as well. So you've got him as a director. You've got the producer Owen Bell, who's worked on things like Bob Servant for TV. And then you've also got people like Steve Canny, who worked on Brian Gulliver's Travels on Radio, which we slabbed. He was the executive producer on the Porridge reboot. He executive produces all the Mrs. Brown Boys specials. So you look. Oh, and the other producer, Grant Havard, cut his teeth. He was the first thing he worked on was he was the first assistant producer on your favourite Warren. You remember that with Martin Glyn? That keeps coming up.
I thought you were making the case these are all highly experienced.
Well, apart from Garant, anyway. Obviously, we'll leave him out because I know you're not a fan of that. But do you know? Well, yeah, these are people who worked on kind of stuff that veered off the mainstream, and it's surprising, isn't it, that you? But maybe that's the brief is I just want a mainstream comedy about family life, and that's what they came up with.
Well, I mean, while we're on credits, we should say for legal purposes and also for interest, it's a BBC Studios production for BBC Cymru, as I believe it's pronounced, if I remember correctly, which is, of course, BBC Wales. And we never know, do we? It was the frustration last week with Ronnie Barker, which was a 50-year-old show. It's still a frustration with this, a much newer show. We don't know the conversations that have gone on. We don't know whether there were limitations put on how free they were creatively. Obviously, BBC Cymru is the customer. So, the customer in some situations is always right, or certainly calls the tune. So if they put certain limits on it, we want it to be a traditional, in quotes, family sitcom, then, you've got to work to that if you're going to work for them at all to that brief.
I did get the feeling that it was like that. And I tell you what, the giveaway for me is, I don't know whether you noticed this as well, is the amount of language that's used or not.
Continue your theme. I'm not quite with you.
Well, the swearing wasn't very gratuitous or widespread, and you kind of think if there's not a lot of bad language in it, I always think it always gives me the impression that they've said this is going to go out family time. It
does sort of hint at that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it was like she that interchange there with his mother, and I thought, it was surprisingly devoid of bad language. Which I kind of thought she would have been effing and jeffing at him, and didn't. It was all very kind of subdued. So I don't know. What do you make of him as an actor? I just love him. He's got these breathy, swallowing and talking kind of thing that he does that makes. I always think he's so natural. He's just so. But I'd really get sucked into whatever character he's playing.
Yeah, I think I go along with that. Unfortunately, somehow it wasn't, we're already saying it wasn't allowed to sort of take off. So I don't know, where's the constraint there? Is he part of the reason it didn't take off because his performance either wasn't allowed to fly or something he hadn't carved out enough space in the script? I don't know. What is it not an interesting enough character to build an entire show around? I have to ask that awkward question.
No, I never thought of that, but you're right. Yeah, there is that kind of. Has he got enough of an edge to him? Is there enough depth to him?
I wonder. I mean, some people, and it's no denigration to them, although it can sound like it. Some people are best at being second fiddles, and those are the people you want in the position of second fiddle. And you let someone else be the premier fiddle, the first fiddle. I'm talking about violins, of course, nothing more suspect than that. But I always remember thinking. Will I name names here? Yeah, I will, for the sake of illustration. But again, not to be nasty, but back in the days when I'd watch The Big Breakfast, so that's going back to Channel 4, back in the day when Johnny Vaughan was on the up. And I think, if I remember correctly, Lisa Tarbuck was his sidekick. And I always thought that she had some great comebacks live on the show, and if they're live, and you could just tell the context, and he was riffing. So I thought, that she's really sharp. She should be allowed to be in the main seat someday. And then, sure enough, he goes on holiday. She does occupy the main seat, and for me, she was kind of exposed in that position. Whether it was the nerves of that, she's much more experienced now, and she's a very accomplished actress, performer, presenter, radio disc jockey, and so on. But I felt that, if she'd never been allowed to be in that position, then you could always, your mind could sort of, fill the gaps for it. And it was only when she was in that position, I thought, I was starting to see her limitations, shall we say.
There was and Steve has written it, of course, he's had a hand in writing this thing, but there seemed to be a lot of story in there for one episode. Did you feel that at all as well?
Do you mean that as a criticism? Too much to actually get a grip on?
Yeah, I think there were kind of so many strands of stuff. I mean, there was the stuff with his mobility scooter, and then there was the lad who obviously his marriage had broken down, and he was living next door to his ex-wife or his ex-girlfriend or whatever she was, and his mother was off having a dalliance with another fella. And I kind of felt there was a lot happening in one episode.
There was a lot. I mean, I hesitate to criticise it for that because it could seem a bit churlish, complaining about having too much story. I mean, the question has to be, if you were the script editor, what would you take out of that? And there's an awkward question for you.
Well, it was only really to recognise what you were saying about was there enough depth in his character to have more of him, and why didn't they have more of him? And it felt to me like that because they were trying to develop all these other plot lines that they hadn't really got the space to let his character breathe.
Yeah, I can see an argument for that. Well, I sort of hinted at that, didn't I? So if you could have, I don't know, maybe a scene with him and one other where it gets more reflective, and building a backstory, I think, would be one thing that you might want to shore up, because there's precious little of that, isn't there? If I remember correctly.
Let's have another clip then. See if we can raise a titter.
Or lower the misery count at least.
Yeah, certainly. Second clip then. Glyn makes his way over to the local social club to confront a guy who his name is Di, and he's known as Di Up and Down. Glyn believes that Di has stolen the mobility scooter mirrors.
Buckle my shoe, 32. Top of the shop, 90. On its own.
Stop! I've come for what's mine, Di. Take your hands off your balls and pass them over. You know what I'm talking about. You're a thief.
Glyn.
You've had away with my ring mirrors.
Glyn.
You were in my street this morning.
Glyn.
You denying you were there?
Yes, he was there. But not to Nicky Mirrors. He was there for a fumble with me.
A fumble?
He comes round mine every Saturday morning when you're out. I'm a woman, Glyn. I'm sexually active.
Oh, dear God.
I will not apologise for it. I still like to be explored.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He's not Di Up and Down to me. He's Di in and out.
Oh. Lord.
Any boot?
You, call me a liar, Glyn?
No. I never said that. No.
I fought in the army for men like you so you could be free. And now you come here and you accuse me in front of this village, in front of my sexual partner.
I'm feeling a bit queasy, actually, Di, to be honest with you, now.
You accuse me of being a thief?
No.
I have to say, there was the odd titter in there. So, yes, it did raise a titter. Albeit, perhaps a somewhat down-market titter about to take your hands off your balls, which, of course, is a reference to bingo, lest anyone think otherwise.
Yes. And there's the nice bit where he's kind of getting progressively worse. He's going, I feel a bit queasy now, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Which, hearing about the sexual exploits of his mother. I mean, you got a big shout out to the legend that is Alan David, who plays Di Up and Down, who, if you're like me, you've been watching on your television screens since 1973.
Oh gosh, remind us the show.
Oh man, he played a character called Glyn Thomas in Coronation Street. I think that was his second TV job. But he's been in everything. He's been in The Sweeney, The Squirrels, Minder, Crown Court, Cracker, Lovejoy. I mean, everything through the 70s, the 80s and 90s. Alan David was in it if it was worth watching, He's fabulous character actor. Fabulous.
Do you think he was given enough room to breathe, or his character at least?
Well, maybe there's more to come because without giving a spoiler at the end, I mean, he seems to point to him having a bigger storyline, doesn't it?
Yes. And this is possibly the moment where I should confess that due to a clerical error, I've seen episode 6 already.
Right.
So it's hard to unsee it, but actually it kind of worked as a freestanding thing. Amazingly for me, I managed to follow it despite having missed the previous 5. But, we were there just a few weeks ago with Julia Davis and Nighty Night. That's
yeah.
what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. When viewing 99, when I'd confused myself with the fact that there were 2 series and I thought there was only 1. But anyway, enough about my poor organisational skills.
Well, let me just pose a question to you.
Please do.
Here's something that occurred to me as I think it was in between viewings, and I, like I say, I got that kind of initial disappointment where I thought, I was really looking forward to this, and I really thought it was going to be a lot funnier than. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean. A lot different to how it turned out. Not a lot funnier. But then it occurred to me, and I don't know whether is this a thing? Is there such a thing as we talk about the Irish sense of humour and Scottish humour? Is there such a thing as Welsh comedy? Do you think the Welsh sense of humour is different to the English sense of humour?
I'm probably not best placed to answer that. I mean, this didn't feel radically different, but then at the same time, I think this has been shown across the UK, hasn't it? The thing with the iPlayer is, and it's a plus, really, you can get to see shows that aren't necessarily networked.
Yeah.
Which I think we did in the case of at least one Scottish comedy. I'm not sure had been transmitted across the whole of the UK. This doesn't feel particularly unique. I love the accents. I've always had a soft spot, particularly for the South Wales accent, which we're hearing here. The North Wales accent, as with the Northern Irish accent, is a bit harder, but no less.
I mean, like Murphy, the granddad who's in the shed, Robert Pugh. I mean, I could listen to him read the phone book out. To be honest with you, he's just got an incredible deep voice, hasn't he? He's like kind of talking like that.
Oh, yes.
Just make sure you do it. And it's like you thought the gravitas that he brings just with a voice is just incredible, really. It's amazing.
You went very Richard Burton there for a moment. I got very excited.
Did it? Oh, sorry.
I don't mind telling you all.
I said to Liz, I said,
you're not having that bloody ring. Not on my salary.
I said, put your act back on. Nobody's looking at you, love. Yeah, I don't know. To sort of almost give a counterpoint to my own question is that I did wonder whether Welsh humour is just a little bit bawdier than English humour, a bit more end of the pier.
I don't know. I mean, we are talking something that's on mainstream TV. I don't know, but there's bawdiness in your friend Shakespeare's work, so that it goes back a long way in England as well.
But there you go. Anyway, go on. You go first, Hugo.
Yeah, so it's 3 out of 5. Make it clear I'm marking this episode, which is Series 1, Episode 1. You know me, I'm a bit more generous than you, and I felt I had to acknowledge that it's a competent product, but competent can be, with me, a bit of a code word for I didn't really laugh.
I had this very similar, and you're right, you are more generous than me. I had a very similar feeling with the whole thing, really disappointed. I probably will go and watch another couple of episodes, though, just to see whether it's an episodic thing or whether, watching it kind of falls into place when you watch more episodes. I will give it another bash, but it was a 2.5 out of 5 for me, giving it a grand total of 5.5 out of 10. Still a respectable score, over halfway through. That's the Tuckers. Then you can catch up with it if you're listening to this around the time of its release, the podcast. Then I'm presuming it's going to be on. I think they've had another 2 series commissioned. To be honest with you,
have they?
Yeah.
Well, I'm told by people in the biz or who were in the biz, who can't be mentioned for legal reasons, that it's fairly normal to engage actors with an option for up to 3 series.
Right.
But then very often the 3rd series isn't made if it doesn't take off.
Right.
And then people are, I think, released from their contract, if I remember. But you need a legal and showbiz brain on that one. Specialisms, certainly the legal specialism I don't have.
Interesting you say that, because I was just reading only yesterday that, remember Kate and Koji, the ITV series that we slabbed a while ago?
Oh yeah, I remember it well.
Jimmy Adebola, who played Koji, has had to be recast because he's got commitments in the US. So they've got a 2nd series and he's not going to be in it, which is I don't know what happened there with their legal department, but there you go. It doesn't always work, does it? Anyway, time for home. Oh, someone else has fallen off now.
Have you lost your other leg?
I'm going to have to just sit very, very still, I think.
You are. You'll be called Shane up and down if you're not careful.
I know, yeah, 4 up and 1 down. Time for homework for next week then. What have you got for us?
Yes. Now, I do this with some trepidation, not because the show isn't good. I don't know if it's good. I literally haven't seen it, but I've been intrigued about it. And a number of people have asked me, have you seen it yet? And I feel like I'm being bombarded from all angles. The trepidation centres on its duration, which is an hour long. Now, there might be a special dispensation for you if you kick off on this, that instead of our usual 2 viewings or 2 listenings, depending on the format of the show, that you are allowed to watch this just once, but it's like the hello. Watch very carefully. You will see this only once. So the show in question is The Outlaws. It stars Stephen Merchant and also Christopher Walken. I could have used that as a clue, couldn't I? Because there can't be too many shows with both of those guys in.
Well, I got it straight away if you had done, because I've kind of been watching this with eagle eyes, because I mean, like you say, Christopher Walken, it's just like amazing, really.
That's quite a catch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, is it called a sitcom? We'll have that old argument next week, I'm sure. But anyway, The Outlaws, and that is on BBC iPlayer. And I think it's, as we speak, available for over a year, but don't leave it forever, because you never know. You might be listening to this when we made this a year ago. So on BBC iPlayer, not necessarily outside the UK, although I'm sure you'll put it in the blurb, dear Shane. You put very comprehensive details with each and every podcast we make. And I'm going in at the ground floor, Series 1, Episode 1. Put 59 minutes aside. I think it's not quite an hour. And hopefully enjoy.
Love it. I'm really pleased you have, because, you know, I'm always the one who ends up suggesting, or I feel like I am suggesting.
Yeah, you have had a couple where you've crept over the half-hour mark.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
And I feel really bad about it. And then so like I kind of think, and I kept looking at it and think, should I mention? I thought, I'll wait until he calms down a bit. So we're on the same wavelength, aren't we? Anyway, which is good news. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, The Outlaws, Series 1, Episode 1. I'm going to look forward to that. That's our next outing. Don't forget, you can catch up with us on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify. You can also grab us on YouTube as well. We would prefer if you could do it from Spreaker, because that helps us out immensely. And I think they've got like a little app now that you can download and actually listen to us and all your other favourite podcasts as well via Spreaker. But it does help us out if you listen via Spreaker rather than YouTube or anywhere else.
Okay, and then on anti-social media, we are at Comedy Slab on Twitter. Do please follow us there for some interesting comedy tweets. I'd say it's quality over quantity. And also we are at Comedy Slab at our Facebook page. If you could give us a big thumbs up there and like us, we'll like you back. Nay, we'll love you. And notwithstanding the fact you are, of course, going to listen to us on the Spreaker app, which you will immediately download if you haven't already, we wouldn't mind a bit of a boost on Apple Podcasts / iTunes as well, please. We don't ask for much. So a nice generous star rating there and a bit of blurb as to why you, as we hope you do, love the show. Again, we'll love you back. And personal recommendation, or via the dreaded Zoom meeting, or however you do it, other video conferencing software is available. Thank you very much.
You could, although, be wary of the protocol. Oh, sorry, is that the gaydar?
Is that someone at the door?
Is that your? Is it? Someone?
Well, it's you fancying me, apparently.
Oh, right, okay. You've set mine off as well.
It's your end, darling.
You smoothie. I was just going to say, be careful of the protocol as to whether you should turn up on time for your Zoom meeting as well. Right, listen, I'm gonna go before he sets off the fire detectors and everything else. You're an animal, aren't you?
I'm a one-man gaydar trigger, apparently. And I'm going to go looking for wing mirrors as well, probably so I can do my makeup. And that was a terrible stereotype. But I think you're in the frame, pardon the pun, for nicking my mirrors. So you're chief suspect.
Shane up and down.